All right, awesome. So my name is Laura Williams. For those that have not become aware of who I am or haven't been introduced to me, I am a CNA instructor and more recently a medication aid instructor also. And I've done this role roughly for about going on 5 years now. I was just looking at the date that I've been with a local community college, and my husband and I are actively starting a CNA program here in Texas. So we're on the journey with you. If you already have one, congratulations. And for those who are trying to get their program started, I'm in the grind with you and I'm celebrating that with you also. But I am a registered nurse, actually roughly about 2 years have had my registered nurse. I started in the healthcare industry when I was 16, actually, so started very young. And my only intent at that time was to be able to take care of my grandparents. That's all. I didn't expect to make it a career. I am very surprised that it did become what it is, and it is what I love. I love serving seniors and caring for them, and that led me to other different roles. I've been a nurse aide, been a medication aide, LVN, RN, so just kind of worked my way up the ladder and just recently transitioned off of my corporate job. So to run this online business full time and to focus in on launching our school here in Texas. But we all know that CNAs are the backbone of healthcare. And my experience as a nurse aid instructor definitely has given me that opportunity to understand how to better educate, engage, and develop curriculum so that we can cultivate nurse aid students and really produce excellent healthcare professionals, right? Because we know a lot of those CNAs that are in our courses or will be in our courses, they have a vision to be a nurse. A lot of times that's where they're trying to go. And what I've experienced is once I got my CNA, I knew that I can do anything. You couldn't tell me anything. I had the confidence that I needed. So I really enjoy being a part of that part of the journey where my students are saying, you know what, Miss Laura, now I have the confidence to do the next thing, which may be nursing school. So that's what we offer as CNA instructors. We don't just give a certification or train, but we're building confidence for the next generation of healthcare professionals. Also in my nursing career, which actually feeds into my education and me being an educator, I was able to develop teams. So one of the reasons that our company, that the company that I just actually transitioned of 15 years, crazy, from one of the reasons that our communities that I was leading got the spotlight is because we were able to decrease a lot of the problematic things that impact seniors, like falls, medication errors, overuse of narcotics, because of some of the things that I bring into the CNA courses. So that engagement piece that we're going to talk about is actually what I did in the facilities to help decrease those norms that we normally see happening. So those methods have been proven over and over and over, and they may seem simple, but I've seen the evidence of it in senior living because of my leadership roles that I've had. So that's a little bit about me. I would definitely love to know, I know Ms. Victoria Davis, I would love to know about Shannon. Shannon, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? And have you already launched the CNA program? Are you in the process? Tell us a little bit about your journey. And you're on mute because I muted everybody to make sure we get the background noise.
Hello.
Hey, Shannon.
How are you?
I'm good.
Oh, well, no, I'm not a CNA. I just been in the healthcare field for 14 years. So I want to be a CNA eventually and then move on to being a nurse.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So you are actually looking for a program.
Yeah.
Awesome. So where are you located? Because we got owners on the line.
I'm in Maryland.
Maryland. All right. Is there anybody that's from Maryland? We have a potential student on the line. Welcome, Shannon.
Thank you.
Yes, welcome, welcome. Definitely reach out to me. If there's not anyone that's in Maryland here, I am connected to a few other owners, and I would love to get you connected.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, welcome, welcome. Nicole, tell me about yourself. And you're on mute if you're trying to, there you go.
I got it. Okay, hello everybody. I'm Nicole. I'm an LPN. I've been an LPN for, it'll be 30 years in January.
Wow, that's awesome.
It was a long time, huh?
Yes, Nicole, yes.
So I've been a CNA instructor since 2011. The first school I worked at let me kind of run the school for 2 years, so I know the ins and outs a little bit.
Yeah.
Then I was hired from a school district to put their program together for the school year, the high school program. But I've
Wow.
been going to open my own school since 2012. And you know, the more knowledge I obtain, the harder it is for me to work for somebody else.
Come on.
Because I have a vision. I have this huge vision and nobody sees it but me.
Yes, that is so true. Hence why I had to transition.
Yeah.
It is so true. Once you get the feel of it, and it's different, also because you have a vision, right?
Yes.
And when you're working for someone else, you have to kind of submit to their vision.
Right.
And if you have a solution and they don't receive it very well,
right.
I get it. I
Yes.
get it. I get it. So where are you located? What state are you located in?
I'm in Washington State. I'm from St. Louis, but I've been in Washington since I was 13. So
Washington State.
Way up north.
Awesome. 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 Okay. Well, welcome, Nicole. Thank you so much. And Victoria said in the chat box, that is very true, Nicole. So we are all in agreement with you.
Yes.
Person, welcome, welcome. Thank you for sharing with me.
You're welcome.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. I love to post this picture, and I actually change up my ladies because also I like to see diversity, right? We need that. We don't see a lot of, I know in the nursing home here, there's very few of women of color, men of color, but I get excited when I see us in the room. But I always wanted to go back to my why. Why do we need to look at online education, especially if we have the opportunity to? There are still some states that have not gotten on board from what I've seen, but that does not mean that we shouldn't envision it, right? I'm hoping that if anything good can come out of COVID-19, it could be that we have the ability to not only start some online programs, give it as an option and an additional option, but also that it will stay. That's what my prayers have been like, let this part of it stay. Because in Texas, I'm based out of Texas, we, before COVID-19, was not allowed to have an online anything. So I'm hoping that this proves that we can, that our passing rates won't change, and that we can still impact our students the same way. But the other reason behind that why is the seniors, right? We're able to continually produce healthcare providers that are excellent to provide that care for the senior population or whatever population they decide to go in, because now we can go into home health, hospitals, those that are in more vulnerable situations. We are producing that. And I know that the seniors are happy because also being a DON and being a director of assisted living and memory care, staffing was the worst thing in my life. Like I felt like I had to embrace every time. But if I could get a great, team of people that will provide excellent care, man, right? It improves every single thing that we do in the healthcare field. So this is our why. This is why we do. So I always like to talk about virtual impact because some of the questions and the one-on-ones that I've had is, can I impact my student the same way? And no, most people don't say it that way, but that's usually the question, like how effective is the program? And what I hear when I hear that is more of impact, because I'm used to teaching students face-to-face. So for me, that's where I can touch and feel. I'm very hands-on a nurse, so I can understand how some people, and being an instructor, that this was a hard transition for a lot of us. But I wanted to just give a snapshot. These are students that I actually virtually teach for a school based out of South Carolina. I have a teaching contract with them. They literally launched an online program right in the middle of COVID when we could not meet in person at all. And Miss Wendy sitting at Professional Medical Training Center reached out to me to see if I would be willing to teach online. Why does that matter? Because I did everything online for the company. That was a part of my corporate role. I trained the nurses throughout the U.S. virtually. That was the main thing, outside a few moments of travel. So I felt very comfortable with the tools. And these are those students. These are just snapshots. But these are some of those students that felt the same impact and response I would get from students in class, if not even more, because I felt like put more of an emphasis on, hey, you can do this, because I'm not able to see them face to face. So I always like to remind you that you still are you, right? If you're impacting your students in a face-to-face environment, you definitely can still impact them and be effective as an instructor on a virtual standpoint. So yes, the effort has to be placed there, but it's still there. And I always, even this weekend, a lot of them got their certification. So I got calls. I've been crying all week from the good news of them applying to nursing schools and different things like that. And these are students I have never seen in person. So you can do that. And that's why I am singing the anthem of online education. I wanted to also give an example of the financial impact. So one of my clients in South Carolina, this is how much they made with me teaching 5 of their classes by adding an online program, y'all. Yeah. And that's not in addition to the programs that she has running in person. So this is 5 classes. This is how much revenue that this one school made by adding an online program. So if I haven't convinced you, then I don't know what what else can. That there's great potential, not only from an impact standpoint of the lives we're changing, but also as a business owner from a financial standpoint. As you continue to build your program, you have the potential to add in addition to what you're already making in-house. So I just wanted to put that out there. And that's just one. I didn't count up the rest, but this is just one company that I helped transition in the midst of COVID, and I asked, can I share these numbers? So this is what they made so far, 5 classes. All right, so let's do a little Q&A, because I always want to hear your feedback. What are some challenges that you faced online? And I already know Victoria's, because we talked about a lot of it, and I actually want to share some of that with you to give you nuggets too, as an instructor to instructor, what we can do to improve how the online process runs smoothly. Hence why I wanted to create this event to talk about online program structure. So what are some things you're facing online? Yeah, Nicole said that's lovely. It is lovely, Nicole. Yes, yes, yes. Distractions in the home, most definitely. So one of the things that you know, I had to learn, and then even Ms. Davis was sharing with me too, is that the rules that we have in place for our in-person classroom is definitely have to change, because now we're teaching from a virtual standpoint. And if you have young kids, you already know what we're talking about, right? You got to put them in one part of the room so that the dog don't bark. You know, all of these things have to be maneuvered. So definitely how you navigate that, your code of conduct, what the environment needs to look like. You know, are they shopping while, you know, being online? So you have to think about those things. When we're thinking about online program structure, also think about the guidelines. So you're gonna have to go beyond the classroom setting, because in the classroom, we can control, hey, you need to not be on your phone, right? But in the home, you know, what if they're cooking, you know, with their phone on? And they're like, you know, my biggest thing, video has to be on. So I always put that in here. The video has to be on. Make sure you have that as a requirement also, because when we teach in person, we can see if the content connects or if it disconnects. If I'm looking in your face, and they'll laugh at me because I will say, okay, that looked like that went completely over your head. Because if I can see you, then I can know if you're trekking with me versus. So I always tell them, your video has to be on throughout. That's a part of your participation. All right, so those distractions in the home, that's important. They need to find a space, and they don't know that, right? It's new to them also, what they have. What are some other things that you got? Yes, Nicole said, students thinking it's okay to jump in the car, drive, ride to class, laying in bed, video off. Yes. Second class, she said, beyond I had to establish housekeeping. You just do. And a lot of times we have to live through it to understand what those rules are. And I don't know about you, in nursing school, I would do that. I'd be like, why are they telling us we can't wear red tennis shoes? And I'd be like, oh, somebody came to class with red tennis shoes in a class. You know, in my mind, duh, I wouldn't wear red tennis shoes in clinicals. But you won't know until it happens and you're like, oh, that's a green rule now. So make sure that you establish what your what your rules are, and definitely online education has to. It looks different. It just looks completely different. Any other things that y'all have experienced or think may happen? Yes. Oh, Victoria says, being dressed appropriately. No PJs, no lights out. I need to see you, right? That's a part of seeing you. I need to see you. Also, how we dress indicates how we may feel that day. So I think it's also important to talk about dress code, only because if I'm in my pajamas, I know I'm not involved, like I'm not fully engaged in nothing that I'm doing right now. And I will kind of kick my feet up and get really comfortable. So when you're thinking about your online program structure, just think about those practical things that you can add as those game rules, or like Nicole said, at housekeeping, and just add it. And I mean, a lot of it you won't know until somebody just does it, right? If somebody's out mowing the yard while they're on class, like that's not gonna work. So that's some other things. I'll go back to one thing that Victoria said that was really good. Having engaging content instead of constant PowerPoint slides. Yes, and I'm gonna share some of my tools that I like to use online, and I actually use them in person too. So I always say, don't just think about this in online format. We are focusing on that, but use them in the in-person classroom too, and break up your time of convo with your students. That way you're not talking the whole time. All right, so let's talk about your program structure. How did you establish that? Let me know in the chat box. What are your hours per day? How many weeks is your average CNA program? How long is each lecture time frame? Like how long are you lecturing from the time that your students take a break? And this will help me give you some insight on how you can break up that time so that your online program can flow a little bit better. So tell me in the chat box, what do you have? What is your hours? How does that look from that standpoint? What are your hours and time frames? Some people have a 4-hour program. Some people have a 6-hour program. How does that look for your program that's running right now? Victoria, how long is your program, your time where you connect with your students? Get my
Oh, can you hear me?
oh, now I can. Now I can.
Okay. So yeah, for our first online that we just completed, it was 4-hour increments. Because we also had an in-person class going at the same time, but then our in-person classes are at 6 hours. So we do 5 lessons per day because it's 30 lessons.
Okay.
So we have 5 lessons over a 6-hour period of time for 5 days. And then we go into clinicals.
Okay. All right. So 4 hours for online and then 6 hours for in-person.
Right. And the only reason why that one was 4 hours is because we just kind of had to make it fit, but it was more online classes because we just didn't know if 6 hours would be too much
Yeah, that makes sense.
Online. So that's the reason why we kind of just played around with it. And then for the next one, we're going to figure out how we're going to change it.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. All right. And then Nicole has a similar setup, 2 weeks, 5 days a week. Oh, wow. Y'all have a 2-week program in Washington. 4 hours per day, a week 3 in class, labs, 20 hours. Perfect. All right. So really, ideally, from what I can tell, you have a 4-hour time frame that you are training your students online. And I would agree with that. One program I taught was 6, and there is even an 8-hour program. It can be a little much for the student, and it can be a lot for you. So unless you're breaking up that time very effectively, A lot of times you're finishing your content that you've already set for the week early on because it's too long. So I would say no more than 6 hours in an online format. And then I would say even the 2 hours, that extra 2 hours, I would even put more homework stuff or group work involving in that specifically.
So for Nicole, how many hours do you have to have in clinical?
Oh yeah, that's a good question.
We have to have 40.
Okay, that's similar to us. So you have a 2-week program mainly. Oh, so you have a 4-week program,
Yeah,
really?
because the third week would be clinicals.
Got you.
The
Okay.
way ours works is we have to have 50 hours clinicals, but 10 hours can be used in class in the lab.
In the lab.
We have the students out in the field for 40 hours. That's how most of our schools do up here.
Awesome.
Wow,
Okay.
that's good, because for us it's 75 hours of clinical, and we can use 16 hours in the lab.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can use 16 hours, and it's 40 hours in clinical for us in Texas. Yeah, and ideally our programs are 4 weeks if it's a day program. Yeah, definitely. So typically, when we're looking at that 4-hour time frame, one of the things that I would recommend is that your lecture time, I would say no more than 30 to 50 minutes. And, you know, ideally with statistics, it says 30 minutes. At 30 minutes, most people tap out of the content. I normally lecture for about 50 if I'm lecturing. Right now, I do everything online and I have a platform, so I don't lecture. But if I'm doing anything verbally with the students, it's usually 50 minutes and 10 minutes off. So, but I would say between those two, you know, that would be ideal. So if you start to see your students tap out, usually they say just because of the age that we're in, the attention span, 30 minutes minimum is what is recommended, and then a break. But ideally with our programs, I think CNA programs are looking for that 50 minutes, and then you have that 10-minute or 15-minute break. Mine is usually 10 minutes. So that's something that I would definitely recommend. I wouldn't talk no more than 50 minutes if you're gonna be talking, because it's a lot for you and it's a lot of information for the student to take in. One of the things that I've recommended from one of my other clients is if I'm lecturing, I will do like a 2-hour lecture window, meaning, and I'll give you an example of what I mean. Like, let's say my program starts at 8 a.m. I'm gonna lecture to 8:50 and give them that 10-minute break. So let's put a little, let's see, 8:50 to 9 a.m., you know, break. And that's their 10-minute break. And I'll do another set of that, like at 9 to 9:50, right? And then their break is gonna be at 9:50 to 10. And then from that point on, I don't go into a lecture on how to do an engagement type like tool, and I'll talk about that next, game or some type of group activity. So I usually do a lecture in those 2-hour increments, just because if you, in my mind, even if I'm in class, if I'm just doing the same thing for 4 hours, I tap out. I've done it every single time. I will tap out of that information, and we want them to get it so we don't have to keep repeating ourselves. So I would recommend, if you're gonna do a lecture, do it in 2-hour increments in this way, in this structure, that you're lecturing for 30 to 50 minutes, you're giving them a mental break, come in for another 50 minutes or 30 minutes, and you give them a mental break. Then you would go into your engagement activity. And I'll actually give you examples of some of the tools that I use online specifically. And I've had the students tell me, can you please do that again? Or can you schedule that for us to do as a study point? So I know that it's working and they like it because they're asking for more of it. So in between those, after those 2 hours lecture increments, I will do like a group activity. And that can look like, what I normally do is I actually love to do short videos. So I have a whole little archive of videos that prepares them for my lecture or complements my lecture. So sometimes I may have the students start off with a video and a discussion, like a discussion board activity. So when we get to talking about, let's say, Alzheimer's and dementia, they have already some level of knowledge of what we're going to be talking about today. Because there's very few students, you always have those students that's going to read ahead of your lecture, right? But the majority of the students are like me. I'm going to be in your class and I'm going to hear your lecture, hear the content, and then I'm going to go study. So if you want to be able to have a robust type discussion, or you want to be able to ask questions in your lecture, then what I would say is put that group activity at the start of your class and have it be the very thing that starts your class off. So if you're using Zoom, Zoom has a feature where you can put your students in a breakout session. So similar to what we would do in class where we'd put, you know, Sally would sign, you know, Sammy and so and so and so and so, you can actually virtually put them into breakout rooms on Zoom where they disappear from the main screen and they would be in those prospective groups. And you can have them work on a group activities. Why is that great? Number one, you get a break from your lecture time. It, you know, it complements the objectives that they're going to be learning today. Two, it breaks up the learning time for them and it allows them to engage with a different type of activity and content, because we do have the different type of learners, right? We have those that are visual, then we have those that are very hands-on. So if you have a group activity that they can do virtually where they're connecting with each other, because that's one thing that I really wanted to make sure that they still had, was that connection between the students, right? Because when we're in person, they automatically start building relationships. So when we just take them off of the main screen and allow them to do a group activity, and I would say I do it almost every class. One of the contracts I have, I teach twice a week for this school, and every class we have a group activity. And literally when they go to their clinical site and their skills, guess what? They're texting, because we're on group text, and they're in South Carolina, you know, or they're, you know, in North Texas. They're like, hey, let's get together and eat. So that relationship and that bond has been cultivated in an online format. So I always recommend do your group activities. You can add a video, and then you want to add some discussion questions, because this is a time filler. So add some discussion questions that's going to help those students cultivate, because they won't know what to say. So, and they just gonna look at each other. You already know, like they're gonna just sit there and not engage. So you wanna make sure that you can facilitate that without having to facilitate it. Also with Zoom, when you put your students in breakout rooms, you actually can transition to each breakout room and help facilitate conversation. So you can leave the main screen and go into breakout room number 1, let's say, and leave that group and then go into breakout room number 2. So Zoom actually has a feature that allows you to kind of be in those moments and be there and be present with your students. What do y'all think about that? I'll take a pause moment because I can talk about this all day. What do y'all think about that? Is that something that you're already doing? Is that something that you feel like would be helpful? Do you want me to give you another example of what that can look like in regards to your group activity options that you can do? What do you think?
Example would be great, but I think I love that idea, and I did not know it existed.
It does, Nicole. I'm all into the virtual stuff. So yes. You can you know, depending upon what you're using platform wise, or if it's just emailing your students, you can always obviously send them the link, right? And then attach your questions to that. However, that way they have it the day before. So when you put them in the breakout room sessions, you can say, hey, remember that email, go to it. I want y'all to look at the video, and then we're gonna do a group discussion. So where I do like to place it, I'd like to place it after my 2-hour increments. Let's say we're all doing a 4-hour class. So now I done knocked out 2 hours of lecture time here, right? And then I'm gonna literally almost deduct 40 minutes just with group discussion, just group. Or you can put it where your group activities right on the top of the lecture again, which I love that, especially for like when we're talking about chronic conditions. skills, maybe Alzheimer's especially. I'm very passionate about talking about that. So I always like for them to already have some knowledge so I can have a better lecture time with them. Then I would recommend, if it's those type of topics, then you would put your video thing, you know, at the beginning and already, so that way when you're talking about the knowledge, they can actually add to that discussion a lot better than if they're just receiving from us. So that's one of the things I will do. So now we didn't deducted almost 3 hours of time, right? Once they get back, I'll obviously tell them, give me a debrief. What did you talk about? What did you think about the video? How did it connect to our lecture? Was there any new knowledge? I always like to ask, was there any new knowledge? Because it lets me know if the video was it valuable, right? Because we want to put stuff in front of them that's valuable to what we're discussing. And if they're like, yeah, miss, I didn't think about it from this way, blah, 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 you know, and that lets me know, okay, I'm keeping that video, I'm keeping it in rotation. Now, after we do that, obviously we're going to do a 10-minute break. We're done with 3 hours. Another thing that you can do with your engagement, you can do, and Victoria knows I love this, you can do a Kahoot game. Let's say we're prepping them for their test at the end of the week, depending upon how you have your test structure. Then you can add a Kahoot game in there. And also you can use Kahoot. This is what I recommend. Use Kahoot as a lecture platform, if you would. So you're going to create these questions, and I'll show you live what I mean. That's based on what we talked about today, or they could be questions similar to what the content would be on their exam on Friday. And what I would do is you are able to see who got things right and who got it wrong. So that gives you a way to clarify and really just hone in on details that we just lectured. So you can actually spend roughly 15 to 30 minutes on a Kahoot game, just depending upon how many questions you put into there. So that's an option after the group activity, after they come into break, or you can go back into your lecture and finish off your 4th hour with, which would be, I think would be 11. It would be our 11 hour, just given that, staying with the time frame that I have here. Our 11 a.m. And then probably, let's say we'll go all the way to the hour, because it's the last hour of the day. Now you're done with your 4-hour window, and that is day 1 or day 2 or however and wherever we are in the structure. Any questions about that? Any questions so far before I keep giving you a few more nuggets? Any questions?
No question, but a comment. I think it is very important to have that engagement, because when I first, didn't know how I was going to structure it, I found my students tapping out because all I was doing is talking and talking and talking. And then it was like, no, I need to break this up and, show the videos, do group activities and things like that. Kind of take a break. Okay, let's go ahead and practice this in the lab. So you can read their body language. It's a little bit different online, but like you stated, if they have the camera on, you can really just kind of tell, and then just start, I just started calling people out. When I saw that they weren't paying attention, then they'll be like, oh, well, I'm not for sure. I was reading and saying, no, we'll find the answer and then let me know. So I start calling them out. They don't like that, but oh well.
I do the same. If I, because I can tell, I know the ones that are acing my exams, and I notice that a lot of times they don't communicate as much. I have one right now. She is a 100-point woman, man, but she never engages. So I definitely call on her, because also I'm trying to cultivate them. We're building more than just CNA skills, right? They're going to be in other team environments. You need to speak up, even if you know the answer. You need to be able to engage and collaborate. We're building more than just a certification, in my mind. That's the way I view our program. It's more than just that, because we know how that environment looks from a long-term care perspective. So yeah, call them out. Call them out. Call them out. So Quizlets, y'all, I'm going to be doing a freebie event, I think next Sunday. I think I'm going to just keep my events on Sunday. And Quizlets also has a new tool that I want to show y'all that is really cool. So it's kind of similar to Kahoot in that it's competitive, right? They can do it individually, or they can do it as a group. But you remember those games at the fair where you shot the water gun and the little horses went across the screen? Do you remember that? And you shoot the water in. So that's how the visual looks. That's how the visual looks when they're getting the answers right. So you can kind of see, oh, if I put Sally, John, and Laura in a group, oh, their group is behind. So I need to talk more about these questions. So I really love this feature. I'm gonna dig into it a little bit more, and I wanna share it with y'all and see if you can add it as an engagement tool, because I think as we break these lecture times up, the better, like you said, because it helps. All right, Nicole, you said I put my students into group text, group emails to communicate with me as well as each other. I like that. I like that, Nicole. Very, very good. And that way they can build relationship. You also, with your group activities, if you want them to collectively, you remember when we were in nursing school, like I always draw from nursing school, there are some projects I could not do alone. The way that they had it, we had to collaborate with others. So you can also do collaborative work that way, where you have a group activity that, let's say it's a case study, because I love case studies. Let's say it's a case study. And I recommend that you layer your case study. You know, you go from the very foundational things that you're talking about to a more complicated thing like behavioral, right? Because I always like to add refusals, you know, or if I have a resident who have Alzheimer's who is not taking a shower for 5 days, you know, just, you know, add those behavioral components in the scenario, and then ask them to give feedback, you know, on how will they interact with a resident, let's say, that's getting up and not eating, if they're working with a resident who has dementia. I'm just throwing something out there. But I would recommend that you layer that. Number one, that is a time filler. That would be even something, if let's say you're at the end of your content, you're on hour 2 and you have 2 hours to go. You can actually use the case study as a way to assign them during the class time. Why not? And build and already have them start having those discussions now, and given, okay, Sally's going to be responsible for how we're going to get Mrs. Sue into the shower. John is going to be responsible for how we're going to get Mrs. Sally to eat today because she has refused her food for breakfast. So on and so on and so on. And maybe somebody is going to focus on the skill aspect of it. What, you know, how are we going to, you know, assist them in the bed? I'm just throwing something out there. But I love to layer my case studies because I want them to think, and I don't want them to just be able to give me a short answer. I want them to build, because in reality, we know as nurses, that's the environment they're working in. It's not going to be this cookie cutter ABCD answer. You're going to have different type of residents that will, they will have to provide care for. So if you can put those in a case study and put them into those groups in your online situation, that's a time filler. You know, and if it connects, let it make sure it connects to your test, right? That's something that you can do to be able to do that online. So I always just say, what are you doing in person? How can we transition that into an online format? And this is one way that we can do that. Any group work, any group think, they call it group think in the educational field. Group think work where it doesn't, we don't want them to just be one person answering it. We want it to be a group situation. This is the visual I have in a lab situation. If you're doing it in person, let's say you have 2 hospital beds and you have 2 other areas. Label each of those areas with a scenario, a case study scenario. Break your students up into those scenarios, and they have to rotate. So for day 1 online, you're going to do case study number 1. You're going to be taking care of Miss Sally, and this is her scenario, and this is what I want your group to tell me how you're going to do A. Next, on Tuesday, you're going to be transitioning to group section number 2, hospital bed number 2. This resident has these diagnoses. What are some changes and conditions you're going to be looking for? How are you going to communicate to your nurse? So on and so on and so on. And that way, it kind of pans out throughout your lecture time. It pans out throughout each day of your lecture. And again, it's connecting them to what you're already lecturing them with. So your case study should connect with those content areas. I hope that makes sense. Does that make sense for everybody the way I'm describing it? I'm such a visual person, and I'm trying to put it in a way that it makes sense to you. So any collaborative work, anything that we can give them that they can do together. Also, it helps your hands-on learner, because I think that was my hurdle. How do I work with a person who likes to touch and feel? Research projects are important. I do a paper on a condition. I do have my students look up a condition. I want them to know what it is, what are the change of conditions are, also what are the common medications, right? Because they're normally not told that. If a resident gets a new med, what could the side effects be or adverse reactions? What would you see? What would you know? What would you tell your nurse? Also, I always ask them to find someone, a famous person that had that same illness, because it always clicks for them. They're like, oh, I didn't realize so-and-so. It just makes better sense. It's more relatable to this generation. Go
I got
ahead.
a question. When you do the research, are you doing that during the online time, or is that like a out of the classroom assignment?
It's both.
Both, okay.
It's both. So what we could do is I usually have them break up. You can have them break up into groups and have them start looking for sources. So maybe when you break them up into that group activity, that's their group activity. They're deciding what condition they're gonna write a paper on together. They're gonna, they're not gonna do the same illness, but they're having that conversation. So that can give them that collaboration together. Hey, I want to do congestive heart failure. I'm thinking about doing an MS, and then we can say in that group time, I want you to already have 3 sources that you're going to use to write your paper on. And one of those resources has to be the book. Sometimes, teachers like to use the book as a tie-in. It has to be something that is already in your textbook. So that way you can fill in roughly about 30 minutes of them already starting the paper off. And then if there's any questions about the structure, you can answer that, and that'll take a little bit of time. And then homework. Any other questions about the groupthink activity of how we can institute that in an online situation? Nope. Everybody rocking and rolling? Any questions, Nicole? You got it? Let's see. I'm trying to think. Quizlet.
Talk too, huh?
What did you say?
I think because I like to talk too, huh?
Yes, we all do.
Well, so when you give them these research, when is it due? So do you give them the assignment on day 1 and it's due on day 5 or something? How do you do that?
I normally wait till I get to the chronic conditions chapter. So for me, I assign it at that point because I've noticed that the students get overwhelmed. Me and Victoria's talking about that. They start thinking way ahead of what I want them to focus on. So usually once I already start their introduction lecture to the chronic condition chapter, and I use the Hartman's book in Texas, so it's chapter 4 for us. That's where I implement the research paper. But you know what, thinking about it, Nicole, if you assigned it before you got to that section that you wanted to do that research, that would make for a better lecture. It would definitely enrich your lecture, right? Because they've already looked into some of the conditions that you're going to be discussing.
Right.
So then they have more to they have more to contribute. So I would actually recommend that would actually probably be a whole lot better. I normally wait till I get there and then I have them do a presentation. I actually have them do a whole presentation, girl. I'm like, I'll be making them work, y'all, because it's long hours to be online. I'm just saying.
It is long hours.
So I even have them do they can tell me, verbally, or a lot of my students like to do some PowerPoint. So I tell them, I don't complicate the PowerPoint. Please don't do bells and whistles. No more than 4, slides, if any, just give us. So that can be a whole time, right? If you have at least 5 students, usually I try to schedule them and break them out throughout the week. But that in itself is a time filler because you can have them assigned, this is your day, this is your day, this is your day. So when we get to, let's say when we're done with our first 2-hour of lecture, we can have 2 or 3 students do their presentation.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah. But it would be richer if it's a little bit before, now that I think about it. Yeah.
Hartman's is my favorite book, but this school doesn't use Hartman's. They use a really I call it a kindergarten book. I mean, it's so
Oh,
basic. It hurts my feelings. It really does. So
oh
when I
wow.
do lecture, I pull information because I have the Hartmans here. I pull information out of Hartmans just to expand on it. But so I think doing some research papers may be good
That
because
might be good
it's
to
really a
fill in
basic
some of
thing.
that. Yeah. What book is that, Nicole, that y'all using?
It's called Nursing Assistants, a Basic Study Guide.
Oh, that
Yes.
sounds pretty basic.
Yeah, it is basic. It doesn't have any real pictures of people in it. All of the pictures are animated, like comics pictures. So
Oh, wow.
you see a person. So yeah, it bugs me, but it's not my school. So,
Right.
but
Hey, hey, that's just telling you where you need to be. That's all. For real. For real. Yes. Just being able to teach helps me come up with all of this. I mean, if I wouldn't have had the opportunity, I probably wouldn't even be thinking about it, right? So,
right,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So that's definitely an option. Research paper that gets and that makes them the drive and puts them in the driver's seat of their learning. That's big. You know, a lot of times students just want you to just give it to them. But as we were talking about earlier, Victoria and I, you get different demographics of students. So I think it really helps to engage them. You have to engage them differently. You just do. And just listening to us talk is not going to cut it. It's just not going to cut it for the demographic of students that we're getting.
Right.
Yeah. So definitely, definitely. So these are some of the things that I think you can do in your lecture time. You can always obviously lecture for an hour and then go into group. I think 2 hours gives a meat of the discussion, and usually I can get through my content that I have set out for the day within 2 hours of lecture time. So that's why I have that in my mind. But you know the curriculum that you have. And I just kind of wanted to put a visual to how you can break it up. That way you're not talking and you're just like, you know, Victoria gave a good example. There's just not, you know, you can tell when you lose them. So I like to get them on their feet. Kahoot makes them get on their phone. They have to pay attention to the questions that are being asked. The same with Quizlets. Also, because we're going to do a debrief of the group activity and case study, they have to actively participate in those things. That our debrief provides accountability, right? That they're participating in those things. So again, it puts them in the driver's seat. So we're not just giving them all of that information. All of that information. Awesome. Any questions before we move off of this slide? I wanted to kind of show you some of the different little things that I like to do with Kahoot and how that looks. Any questions? All right, silence means no. All right, so Victoria knows some of my little gadgets and places to go, but I definitely wanted to review them again here, just for anybody that's new. Jeopardy Labs is a very good resource. It's free, and there's already some CNA Jeopardy games that can be played. So that is another interactive game that you can do within the group, not in the group setting, but after your 2-hour lecture window. And you can get a Jeopardy game that's connected to your content, or if you have the time, you can create one. Another one, and I'll actually show you Jeopardy Labs. Stump Your Peer is one that I like for big content areas. For Hartman's, it's chapter 4 and 5. So what I do for Stump Your Peer is I have the students online, they have to write 3 questions that's connected to the content that's in that chapter. And then they have to quiz each other. So they have to select. So if it's my turn, I pick Nicole. I'm going to ask Nicole my first question. Nicole has to attempt to answer it. And if she gets it wrong, then I go to the second question, or I can change. So the person that has the more correct answers wins the game. So it also is a good way for them to quiz and prep for the test. And that's why I use Stump Your Peer, because it does allow for that. And it shows me if they've been paying attention. So one class, we did this and they couldn't even answer. None of their peers, like some of them could. It was less than 50%. And I was like, so y'all just didn't, listen to the lecture, right? Okay, guess what we're gonna do? We're gonna go back and listen to this lecture, because I record my lectures for this campus. So it also shows you that when it works well, they're answering them, they're, you know, stumping their peer, meaning that their peer gets to the point where they're like, I can't, like, I don't know. Can I get a lifeline? It becomes very fun. And like, yeah, let's add a lifeline. Who are you going to call on to help you answer this question? But it is a time filler, and it is a way for them to ask questions and also create questions and interact with each other. And it's a very fun thing that you can do with your, I like to do it for large content things that I feel like we need to reiterate concepts. Also, this can be a very good in-person game. How it works in person is, you know, I have my 3 questions and I walk up to the student. Obviously now it's 6 feet from the student, and I ask those questions. And then if I get the questions right, I take those questions from that student, and whoever has the most correct answers wins the Stump Your Peer. So that's how it works in a face-to-face situation. Another resource that I like to use is TED Ed. And I'll show you TED Ed. TED Ed is specifically for educators. So it is connected to YouTube in that a lot of the video content is there, but you can add questions, kind of like I was talking about for your group activities, and create a whole lesson, if you would, for using that TED Ed platform. So all you would have to do is send your students a link to it, and this can actually be their group discussion time. And I'll show you that live. And then I already talked to you about Kahoot. So let me show you what I mean about, let me show you Jeopardy Labs and TED Ed live in action. And of course I have like a million things up, right? That's how it goes. All right, so this is Jeopardy Labs. You can create a Jeopardy game, or you can find a Jeopardy game that's already created. And ironically, there's a whole bunch of CNA Jeopardy Labs already created by other teachers. So the biggest thing is I always recommend for people to do, make sure you check content, because obviously state to state our stuff changes, what it's going over. But you can kind of Google, you know, Jeopardy Labs and see if there's something in here, and your students can actively play. You know, they would choose skin and then ask that question, and notice that it flips over. So you can actually project that to, let me show you, actually launch it. Tells us how many teams. We can print it. So we want to go ahead and start it. And you have your teams down here. You can maneuver points. I'm going to pick skin from 100. Our question pulls up, and spacebar gives us our answer for that. So this is another way to interact with your students online, again, also in person, and it provides competitiveness, because you would break them up into teams, and you can increase the teams too when you first launch this. So this is one of the ones I love, and I had one class that loved it more than any other class. I actually did it with one class and didn't do that with another class. Like I did different games with each just to kind of test it out, and Jeopardy was a hit with a lot of the older population, the older people. They're like, yes. So look it up. There's a lot of stuff already created, or you can create your own Jeopardy lab.
Good question. So with this one, I've set it up halfway, but it just dawned on me. So with Jeopardy, do they keep on selecting one until they miss, and then it goes to the next one once they miss it?
So like, notice it's not bolded because we just got it through. Let's say they got it right at the bottom, you would maneuver the points. So right. I gave team 1. So let's now, you know, I even have the game down, the music downloaded, and give them an option to go to their next one. So it'll just continue to play as you play it here.
So like for team 1, they got the first one right, so then they can continue on answering the questions until they get it wrong, and then team 2 gets a chance? I
normally rotate it. I normally go team 1, then team 2, regardless if they got it right or wrong. I just kind of keep it going that way.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, some teams may just get it all and nobody has had a chance.
That's true.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so I normally just rotate. And what I'll do is the bottom her to screen. Like, I'm like, this is team one, because you kind of see them a certain way,
Okay.
and make sure, hey, do you know what team you're on? And that's how I normally flow through it on the virtual
Okay.
environment. So I would definitely play around with them just to make sure that all of your answers that are correct, that they make sense to what is being asked. You know, and it, again, it's a time filler too. We're always trying to fill in some of that time.
Right.
So do
That's,
you do this with the screen share? Is that how you do it?
yes, and that's exactly what I'm doing right now. Yep. Yep, that's all I have to do, Nicole, is just share it and then tell them to answer, you know, their question. And they get, you know, also I have them collaborate, because they'll be like, well, what do you think? And what do you think? So then I'm like, okay, you have 2 seconds, you know, to tell me what the answer is. And are y'all in agreement? Yes, we are. Okay. And, you know, I said, okay, you know, and then we go on to the next team. But yeah, screen share is perfect for that. Awesome. All right, TED Ed is another one that I like to use more for our group assignments. I've actually created about 2 so far. No, I think 3 or 4 actually now. But you can discover would be the place I would use, where you can search up things. Like, for instance, I was teaching a medication ed renewal course this weekend for the community college. So in this search bar, you can look at lessons that already have been created by instructors. And what that looks like is, I'm gonna go ahead and click on it. What they do is they have a video about it. Notice they have this words here: watch, think, dig deeper, and discuss, right? So they would watch it, click on it. Now, whatever that instructor created, the think deeper, they would just navigate and answer those questions. Obviously, I just picked it right. And then you would navigate, they could navigate to the next one and answer that. So this is also something you can project to, actually. You know, if you didn't want them to do it outside of your class, I do it for like the dementia situation, because there's a great video on here. But you can actually do like I'm doing now, screen share, and have them, you know, answer in the chat box and do it together, where we're going through that. So this teacher put 10 answers. She has a dig deeper here. So I would always review what's already there. I created my own, so I don't really, you know, I did use this for the medication aid because I wanted them to review coronavirus, what it is, and how to protect themselves. But some of the teachers will have some other resources embedded in here that you can actually use as a talking point. And then they have the discuss portion. So this is free, and it's actually specifically for instructors, educators all over the world in different arenas. You can create your own lesson. I'll just show you what that looks like from a standpoint. So some of my clients actually use this in their group, so I can actually see all of their students' responses when they respond to that. So if you created something there, you can actually go to it and see who responded, what they did. I have one for chronic illness, one for Alzheimer's, which this one is really the one I like to use for Alzheimer's dementia. And it shows actually their progress and when they look at this and their grades and stuff. So I can look at their student activity, that's all of that. I love Mrs. Mary Maxwell. She's one of my go-to ladies that I like to watch because she's funny. But this is one of the ones that I created a video with because it talks about, they actually put a family through what it feels like to be Alzheimer's because his mother has it and he wanted to understand. And it's a very touching one. I've had students tear up and be like, Miss Laura, I feel so bad. And so it really provokes them in a way that I like because it's a unique diagnosis and we need to prepare them for it. And so I like to talk about that. And I just have like four open-ended questions. I like those type of questions versus multiple choice so I can get thoughts. thoughts, you know, and my dig deeper is the stages, you know. Let's talk about what, you know, what we may see expressed in our residents as they progress, because it is a progressive illness. So remember TED Ed, it is something you definitely can use and as an interactive. And there's already stuff made, so always look to see what's already created, right? Kahoot is my last but not least interactive recommendation. Discover, there's a free, I think it's a trial now, but I think you should be able, your students definitely can do it for free. I believe you can. I upgraded because I do more with it now. But there are some CNA Kahoots. The biggest disclaimer I have, again, is check out your questions. Because if it's not connected to what you're talking about, or if it's outdated material, then obviously you don't want to be questioning your students on there. But there's a lot of them that have been created for CNAs, and all you would have to do is launch it. You can do a virtual. I usually do the teach, because again, we're doing it together and I can see what questions and answers, what they got wrong. Yes, I can, Victoria, for sure. I can, actually.
Yes, I ended up doing Kahoot, and I saw, oh, I'm like, one is already made for Indiana. So then I didn't review it. I just started playing, and I'm like, wait a minute. That answer is wrong. Nope, that's not true. Yeah, that doesn't apply. So I said, after the third one, I was like, I'm sorry, you guys, but we're not going to do Kahoot today. We're going to do something else. So yes. So
review.
Please check it, yes.
review, yes. And I think it's because of dating, right? A lot of our stuff is updated. I did put the link to in the chat box, but I'll also send it to you via text. I create my own Kahoots. I like to show you what's already created so you can just, you can know that it exists. Also, if you create it, you can also do self-paced learning. So what I like about this is you can assign your Kahoot that you create or find on here to your students as a way for them to study. You will be able to see what they got wrong, what was the hardest question. So you can use that as a tool to study, you know, to really lecture from and clarify some concepts. So you would put a due date on that, create it, and you can actually send that link to your students here. And then they can do it on a self-paced, you know, obviously based on your due date, but you can send that whole copy URL and you can send that to them. So just FYI, they have that feature. A lot of my students in the last 2 classes wanted me to assign it as homework because they like it, using it as a study tool for their exam. So just a thought to be able to do that. Use it, use it, use it. Any questions about those resources? I did put the TED Ed in the chat box if needed, so it's there. It is there. All right, I'm gonna brag on Victoria a little bit. All right, so that is actually the end part of what I wanted to talk to you about in regards to your online program structure. I hope that that was beneficial for you and you felt that it was very helpful to what you're doing already, and it's adding to that. Part of my role and what I do is I do help CNA schools get online. I do help I have a DIY course. I also have a platform that can be utilized as a lecture portion for your program. And I do complete project management. So if you don't want to do it, I actually help you put your curriculum on a similar LMS process. So Ms. Diva Victoria is already on the line, so she's here. I love this picture of you, by the way. And then I also have a Texas client that used the online platform to actually get her school started, because she got approved right in the middle of COVID when we couldn't do anything in person. So she used it as a tool to get her students started, get our program started, and for her to learn the material. She has a business degree and she's a nurse, very unique background. But I'm so excited every time I get to work with these boss ladies, because y'all are doing it, and I'm coming behind you with the school part. I'm coming for sure. And then I have complete project management. I just actually launched, Tiana just launched her online program this past week, and she's rocking and rolling. And what that looks like is I did everything, and I just did some training with her, and it's pretty simple once you get it. It's a very easy tool to use for your students, but it puts your exams, your quizzes, your group, all of the stuff we kind of talked about. I actually put that on an online platform for you, so you can use it, you can grade from it, and you don't have to use 300 different systems to be able to do that. I also wanted to give you feedback, right? Because some of the stuff we talked about today, I wanted you to know what the students say. I survey every one of my students, and everything that I've used and I've talked to you about today, I've done. So it's stuff that I like to show evidence based that it's working. So this one is just feedback on the online classroom. What did they like? Everything was, they felt well informed. Everything was explained very well. They love learning together. So remember, I talked about that group, cultivating that relationship. Remember to help facilitate that, and the way you can do that is those group exams, the group thing, the collaboration stuff. Really love that. The review game. So what I do with my Kahoots, I usually use it as a review, as a way to review content, as a way to review for the test. So this is some of the stuff that they talked about, and it's only a few of them, but the games, review games during lecture, they really loved. They loved the environment, just being settled. Remind you that they're online, so it's not a classroom environment. This is an online situation. They said they could focus more in the comfort of their own home. They like the reviews, group discussions, PowerPoint presentations, because they can work together as a team. So here, she or he is referencing the group stuff, and we have fun. So she's talking about, we did. This class, we laughed a whole lot. Some of the group activities. So I do a religious group activity for this course. I wanted them to look up different religions. So that might be a research thing, because they do have to honor different food practices. So I did add that to the classroom setting or classroom group activity. And it does open up their minds a lot. I got a lot of good feedback from that. But just to see that those group activities really allow them, they get to share ideas, they get to understand together and help each other. They were able to work well with each other and get to know their classmates. So if anything you don't do, just add some group stuff. All right. So that is it of my online program structure. Time with you. I hope this helped. I hope this helped you kind of get an idea of what you can do online. I'm always available for consultations. Also, I have a newsletter that I wanted to make sure that I give you. And you probably are already on that, now that I think about it, for those who signed up. But just note that I'm here to be able to answer those questions. And you feel free to use Per Consultant Facebook page as a tool to ask questions too. You don't have to wait to talk to me. You can post it on there, and I will respond to you. Is there any questions? Thank you for joining me, ladies, and sticking it out and kind of talking. Did the information help? Do you feel like it was helpful for what you're doing right now in your programs?
For me, it's very helpful, because quite honestly, I am gaining more knowledge for my own school. This is not for, I mean, I'm going to implement some of this for sure with the students I currently have, but I'm just gaining more knowledge because my school is coming.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, and Victoria is our tangible example of that. It's coming.
I've been following Victoria since last summer. That's what, yeah. And that's actually how I first saw you.
Yes. I love it. I love it. This is one of the most supportive environments I've had when it comes to CNA education, because I didn't realize it was that many of us.
Yeah, neither did I.
So that was just refreshing alone, and just to be able to be a part of each other's journey, even if it's just encouraging.